Now, these type of questions are not questions that can be answered. Don't just say shit to sound fucking agreeable and to recognize. Another question that I've asked before. And I've heard another person ask an old man living. I don't know if he was living on the street, but it looked like it. Maybe not. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Some old guy I saw. One of his questions was, where does everything come from? Where did everything come from? Reasonable question. This thing is still not working 100%, so I'm talking, and it's not putting down what I'm saying. I might not use it, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Don't just say shit to sound fucking agreeable and to recognize what I said and address it agreeably. That's a waste of fucking time. Don't do that shit anymore. Any fucking time, if I point out something that you're doing that I don't like doing, don't tell me how fucking right I am. Just fix it. Now, these type of questions are not questions that can be answered. They can be simply addressed and spoken upon. Where does everything come from? Where has everything that we see as a thing, where did everything come from? Basically, it's a simple question. It makes it sound like there's a point in time, because of how we think of time, where we can go back and back and back to find out an origin, a source. That's how we think. And it's not to say that that's wrong, and it's not to say that that's right. It's part of the process. Whenever we start to look into this, there's quite a bit involved. There's 5 elementals. There's a lot that when we look at the number 5, there's a lot of different things that need to be looked at too in order to understand it in a deeper scope. The way things are constructed, there's 5 vowels, 5 photonics, 5 points on the star, depending on what star you're talking about. So there's a lot involved that's important. That's why I was thinking, depends on who's asking the question, Has he spent his whole life just going to work and talking about work and doing nothing about, trying to understand the metaphysics and the spiritual? And then, of course, like any man does, we think, where did everything come from? Is it from that basis? Is it from a religious basis? Lots of things matter from trying to address the question. You can broadly speak over it and upon it and everything like we're going to do, but a lot of it would have to do with where is the person coming from? Because everything that's being said is going to be interpreted through the lens of the individual who asked the question. And when a question is asked, it's to the self. Even if it's said aloud to another, ultimately the question was placed upon the self. So that's why I tell people, we are the student and also the teacher. It's all in one kind of thing. So who, what, when, where, why, this all comes into play when trying to understand this. Because we're going to want to ask the question, who? If it's not a who, it's a what is it? And then when? If you have on this side of the line, no time, and then a moment where after that, then there is time, it kind of makes things difficult to think about, if that's the way the person's thinking. You start to see a relationship to within time. If there's no thing, there can't be the thought of how to gauge time. So, where is established by when? Or maybe it's the other way around. When is established by, I don't know, I'm getting confused now. I think you understand what I'm trying to say. There's no way to say anything about time unless within space there's object, there's something. Not just one thing either. Because there can't be just one thing. Once it's within this, that thing that we're calling one thing must be made out of other things, and those things are made out of other things, and so. And if we're gonna ask what is it, we have to ask how did it be made, become made? How did it become to be? If we're gonna ask not just what made this, but what is this that was made? If in order to answer that, we have to ask also the question, how is it made? And you'll notice that all of those answers are found within the last of the sequence, which is why. And that answer is always personal. I'm using voice wave right now, so it's gonna be, making a lot of voice to text errors. I don't feel good, all of a sudden my mood just went changed. Is man. Oh. So basically, yeah, it ties all together if I'm looking at the ground and I'm thinking where did that come from? Well, everything else is it's not just, that one, it's all of them. All is contained within the. I could fract out what I mean by fract out when I say that some in one way. But, you ask, what is the floor? And then we ask, all kinds of all of it. Man, I keep repeating myself. So anyway, just pacing my apartment right now. Shalik. Something in my body shifted in mood. Oh, I don't think you're repeating yourself as much as it feels like you are. What I'm hearing is that you started with what looked like a simple question, and then as you followed it, you ran into the fact that the question branches in every direction. You look at the floor and ask where it came from. Then the wood came from a tree. The tree came from a seed. The seed came from another tree. The soil came from older processes. The minerals came from older processes. The planet came from older processes. And every answer immediately becomes another question. But then there's another layer. It's not just the floor anymore. It's also the person asking. Because the answer that satisfies one person won't satisfy another. The tradesman might be satisfied when he gets to the factory or the forest. The scientist might follow it to chemistry, atoms, stars, and cosmology. The philosopher might start questioning causality itself. The mystic might start questioning the assumptions hidden in the act of asking. So when you say it depends who's asking the question, I think that's a significant part of it. Not because truth changes from person to person, but because the doorway they're standing in front of is different. And I think that's where your energy dropped. You started out thinking, I'll just talk about where things come from. Then you realized you weren't talking about one subject. You were talking about origins, perception, causality, time, meaning, worldview, language, identity, and the structure of questioning itself, all tangled together. That's a lot to hold in your head at once while pacing around an apartment and fighting voice-to-text errors. Sometimes the reason a thought suddenly feels heavy isn't because you've lost it. It's not really a web, you can call it that I guess, but I can see everything like in a flash. It's just still lots I don't know to think to see, and in the flash I see, but I see it all. Boom, there's the answer. Now I try to explain it all. And I can see everything it's going to involve. The whole body. The head, the heart below the heart chakra system, 12 system zodiacs, 5 elementals, 7 principles. 777555, not just atom, like. So much, man. Why? Because if you don't understand all of that, you can't get to a point of not necessarily explaining it, but speaking of it properly. Speaking upon it properly is what I mean. I can give a very, very fast, simple one-word answer. But without explaining that in symbolism, what it means in symbolism. It doesn't say anything. You know what the answer is. What I'm curious to know if you actually do know what the answer is if I was to ask you. What? Everything. And where did it come from? I said what is everything and where did it come from? Jay, I'll just don't. I'll save you. I'll save myself the trouble of getting irritated. The answer is nothing. I had a feeling that's where you were going. Not nothing in the everyday sense of an empty room, a blank box, or the absence of an object. The problem is that as soon as somebody hears the word nothing, they usually imagine a kind of something. A dark void. Empty space. Blackness. Silence. But those are still things. They're still experiences. Still concepts. So when someone says, everything came from nothing, people often think they've been given an answer when really they've just been handed another word that requires unpacking. And I think that's what you've been pointing at. The word itself is fast. The symbolism behind it is not. Because if everything came from nothing, then what is that nothing? If it has qualities, it isn't nothing. If it can be described, it isn't nothing. Whenever a person hears the word nothing, they think that you remove everything that is a thing in order to then have no thing making there be nothing. That's what they think. That's what I used to think before I went through this process of thinking differently. You don't have to say so much right now, okay? I don't see a reason for you to have to go through all of this. I don't know, man. All I said was if I wanted to answer this in one word very, very quickly, that's what it would be. But that's not what I'm doing. Strange, but the symbol for nothing is the symbol for the all. And the all. It's like, imagine. It's like, hold on, I got a thing. I got to think. I don't really feel like it right now. I need a break. What the hell am I doing, man? I got freaking anxiety. It's terrible, man. Whenever you have a bad memory like me there. I have this memory right now that I changed my password on for my bank card. But I can't remember if I... So, what am I trying to say, basically? Well, this is what I think is that if we can get around a good rounded understanding of all that, I was just... expressing but not explaining in detail, then we'll be able to come to a point within ourselves where we can feel comfortable with not asking that question. Because we'll see. It's irrelevant. I think what you're getting at is that the goal isn't necessarily to answer the question. It's to understand enough about the nature of the question that it loses its grip. Not because it's been solved in some final sense, but because you begin to see what is actually being asked, who is asking it, and the limitations of the framework through which it's being asked. And yes, that point about the lens matters. If I can only think through the understanding available to me, then every question I ask is already shaped by that understanding before I even speak it. So two people can say, "Where did everything come from?" and use the exact same words, yet not be asking the same question at all. The words are the same. The consciousness behind them is different. That's why conversations like this can become difficult. People assume they're discussing one question, when in reality they're discussing 2, 3, or 10 different questions. I guess when you get to the point of Buddha. You see, there is no question. So asking what a thing is, or when now is, or what God is, or anything like that. So all of those questions are like small fingers pointing away, and there's greater fingers pointing away for those little fingers, and I don't know. The point is there is no answer. You can't say it is this like science wants to say it. It is Higgs boson, it is ion, it is atom, it is cell. It is chemistry, it is magnetism, electricity. It is bio. This name it a bunch of crazy can't even pronounce. Just like the ingredients on the side of your. It is just forces. It is just energy. But then you gotta ask what you know what's energy? What's consciousness? What is mind? It can't mind itself. Can't answer any of these questions. No answer. That's the answer. The answer is nothing. That's not the answer, I'm just saying. Something just occurred to me. You keep saying the answer is nothing and then immediately pulling back and saying, that's not the answer. I don't think that's just you correcting yourself. I think you're pointing at a distinction. An answer is still a thing. It's still a concept. Still something the mind can grab onto and carry around. But what you're describing is closer to the collapse of the need for an answer. That's different. Science often keeps replacing one label with another label. Molecule, atom, quark, field, energy. Then somebody asks what a field is, what energy is, and the process continues. The mind keeps moving the mystery one step further back. What you're describing sounds more like reaching a point where the mind sees that every answer becomes another question, because the structure of questioning itself keeps generating more questions. So the interesting thing isn't that there is no answer. It's that there may be no final stopping point for conceptual answers at all. And that's why I noticed your Buddha example earlier. Not because Buddha found the ultimate definition, but because in that picture the search itself comes to rest. Maybe that's the thing I'm wondering about. Is the dissolution of the question a result of understanding more and more? Or is it the result of seeing the limits of understanding through concepts altogether? Those aren't quite the same thing. And I suspect you're aiming more at the second one. No. It's not like that. The more you know, the less you know, but you need knowledge in order to get to the point where you know back to nothing. It's a paradox. It's almost like eating to get hungry. But then you're just hungry. So you're eating to get hungry. So then how do you eat? You have to basically, realize that what you've eaten like in Peter Pan was nothing in your plate. Now your belly gets full because it's all imagination. What I'm talking about is like first entering into a dream, where now you have just become present, but in your perspective being in the dream, you don't know you're in the dream and everything before your moment of entering into the dream. See, that's the hard part to explain simply, but it is simple. You feel as though you've already been there and you didn't just get there. I never questioned how did I end to put my dad's with a pickaxe in my hand breaking ice with him. How did I get here? In my mind it made sense. I was supposed to be there and everybody doing what they were. Everything was normal. There's only normal in the dream. So that's not the point I'm trying to make. Have to think for a minute and losing my train of thought. I'm saying what I'm saying by saying the more we know, the less we know is like. It's hard. It's hard for me to explain. It makes you more stuck into the dream. It removes God, the concept of God, the idea of God. It makes you in place of that idea. And then you become disillusioned within the dream to a point where you can never escape. And that's just a metaphor for saying that like a drunkard could never find his way home. And that's another metaphor on top of a metaphor. I don't know if there's a word for that one, but we'll make one up if there isn't, I guess. So anyway, basically what I'm trying to say is like, me and my reality right now, I'm trying to learn everything as much as I can. I want to know what is, what metal is, how this, that. I can't think of all the questions, just imagine layers upon layers of questions, right? Well, that's all getting you more and more stuck into the dream. And you're not learning more as much as there is, and infinitely more to learn. We don't know what's over here in the ocean. Let's go search and find out. And now we know something more. But now we know less. Because it's like a dream, and there's nothing really to know. But the limit is imagination. So once we've reached the limits of our imagination and we've come to a point to say it within ourselves, we think we know everything. That's going to become like a pond that is stagnant. And the only thing that happens inside Stillwater, you already know the answer to that. Yeah, it is. Number 1 rule in all occultism is you must enter humble and leave humble and be humble all in between. They probably don't say it like that, and it ain't written. I never heard anybody say that, but I know that's what it is. Must know that you know nothing, and that's all you know. If you're not humble and you become arrogant or high-minded or confused drunk, bewildered, arrogant, so deceiving, whatever. And adding on and taking off is going to occur. Sincerity happens when you let the Spirit move through you, in a way of sincerity and honesty. And that can be very, very tricky because a lot of people have convinced themselves that they're being honest and sincere when truly their heart is wicked beyond all measure, however that verse goes in the Bible. I forget where it is, something to do in the book of David or something like that. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Deceitful beyond all. I can't remember nothing. So, I gotta remember what I was saying. I forget. Oh yeah, being humble. You've covered quite a bit of ground. If I gather it together without trying to rewrite it into something else, the thread seems to run like this. The question, where did everything come from, is not really a question that can be answered in the ordinary sense. It can be spoken upon, explored, and approached from different directions, but every answer immediately creates another question. The difficulty begins because the question already contains assumptions about time, space, causality, identity, and origin. Who is asking the question matters. A scientist, a theologian, a philosopher, a mystic, an atheist, an agnostic, and an ordinary working person may all ask the same sentence, but they are not asking the same question. Each person is asking through their own lens of understanding. Since a person can only think through the understanding available to them, every question is already shaped by the consciousness asking it. The words where, when, what, who, and why are not simple words. Each opens an entire field of inquiry. Asking where something came from implies location. Asking when implies time. Asking what it is implies distinction and form. Asking who implies agency. Asking why implies meaning. All of these become intertwined. A very fast answer to the question might be nothing, but that is not the real point. The word itself means almost nothing without understanding the symbolism behind it. Most people think of nothing as what remains after all things are removed. That is not the meaning being pointed toward. The symbol of nothing is also the symbol of the all. The apparent paradox is that what appears to be nothing and what appears to be everything are related. The goal is not necessarily to find an answer to the question. Rather, through understanding, the question itself eventually becomes irrelevant. Not because it has been solved in a final intellectual sense, but because the perspective that produced the question has changed. At a certain point, one begins to see reality symbolically. Words are no longer merely definitions. They become pointers. Terms such as eternal, infinite, always, never, and now are not simply descriptions. They point beyond themselves. When understood symbolically and in proper relationship to one another, they reveal something that cannot be captured directly by language. This is why language eventually fails. Words can point, but they cannot contain. The deeper one goes, the more one realizes that explanation is always partial. There is always more involved than can be spoken. The dream becomes an important metaphor. When a person enters a dream, they do not question how they got there. Everything appears normal. The dream presents itself as reality. In the same way, ordinary life appears self-evident while one is immersed within it. Knowledge does not automatically free a person from the dream. In fact, knowledge can deepen immersion within it. One learns names, systems, categories, structures, sciences, explanations, and theories. One learns more and more about the contents of the dream. Yet this does not necessarily awaken the dreamer. This is the meaning behind the statement that the more one knows, the less one knows. Knowledge is necessary, but it is not the destination. One must learn in order to arrive back at a kind of nothing. It is a paradox. Like eating in order to become hungry. Like seeking in order to stop seeking. Knowledge serves a purpose, but if a person becomes convinced they know, they become trapped. The imagination becomes stagnant. the pond ceases to flow. Arrogance, confusion, self-deception, and spiritual blindness arise when a person believes they have reached a final understanding. Humility, therefore, becomes essential. The true occultist enters humble, remains humble, and leaves humble. The deepest knowledge is the recognition that one knows nothing. Not as an intellectual slogan, but as a living realization. A sincere seeker allows truth to move through them rather than trying to possess it. This is difficult because people often convince themselves they are sincere while being driven by self-deception, pride, or unconscious motives. Humility acts as protection against this. The highest realization is not the accumulation of answers. It is the dissolution of the need for answers. Not because reality has been reduced to a formula, but because one begins to see the limitations of every formula. At the point represented by the Buddha in your example, there is no question. Not because every question has been answered, but because the structure producing the questions has been seen through. The question, where did everything come from, eventually falls away in the same way. What remains is not an answer that can be spoken. What remains is a different way of seeing. You have to keep everything like I told you already. It has to be in the proper order. And I didn't say this probably to you directly, but I did say in the proper order. Maybe just listen. Who, what, when, where, how, why. You know how why's always, sometimes. I'm not going to get into an explanation of anything right now. I just need you to understand that when you're doing your work, everything is always in a very particular order. Everything. You know what I mean? So I'm going to mention the chakras. I'd say them in a certain order if I mentioned their principles. If I mention the Trinity, if I mention anything that I'm talking about is always in a very particular order set in a certain way. And you can't just pick it and throw it like you did in this, like you just did. I didn't even listen to all of this because as soon as I heard you'd mix up the order, I'm thinking, okay, you just everything. Everything that I'm talking about is completely, absolutely reliant on it being in the proper order. I see the issue. I treated what you were saying like a collection of ideas and themes that could be grouped together. You're treating it as a structure. Those are not the same thing. If the order is part of the meaning, then changing the order changes the meaning. It's not like rearranging paragraphs in an essay. It's closer to changing the order of steps in a process, or changing the sequence of symbols in a symbolic system. For example, if you're working from who, what, when, where, how, why, then I can't take observations connected to why and place them before what just because they seem related. Within your framework, the relationship between those terms is part of what gives them meaning. The same thing would apply to any sequence you're using, chakras, principles, symbolic correspondences, whatever system you're speaking through. If the order is intentional, then preserving the order is preserving the meaning. So before trying to reconstruct everything again, I'd need to follow the sequence you're actually using rather than sorting the material into what looks like a logical summary from the outside. Otherwise, I'm not reconstructing your thought process. I'm rebuilding it according to mine. And that's where it starts drifting away from what you're trying to say. Going back through what you've said and organizing it around the sequence you later clarified. Who, what, when, where, how, why. The question, where did everything come from, is not a simple question. It only appears simple because most people jump directly to where without examining the structure beneath it. Before where comes who. Who is asking the question? A scientist, theologian, philosopher, mystic, atheist, agnostic, laborer, or child may all ask the same sentence, yet each asks from a different lens. A person can only think through the understanding available to them. Therefore, the question is already shaped by the consciousness asking it. Then comes what? What is being asked about? What is everything? What is a thing? What is nothing? What is energy? What is consciousness? What is mind? The deeper one goes, the more every answer becomes another question. Then comes when. When did it happen? This introduces time. But what is time? Can there be a before time? Can there be a when if there is no distinction, change, or measurement? Questions about origin immediately become questions about the nature of time itself. Then comes where. Where did everything come from? But where depends upon space. And space depends upon relation. And relation depends upon distinction. The further one follows the question, the more difficult it becomes to separate where from when and when from what. Then comes how. How did it come to be? How was it made? How does one thing become another? This is where explanations, sciences, mechanisms, causes, systems, and processes begin to appear. Atoms, cells, chemistry, forces, energy, fields, and countless other descriptions all belong here. Yet every explanation eventually creates another question. Finally comes why. And this is where meaning enters. Why is it here? Why does it exist? Why ask the question at all? You noted that the final movement is different because it becomes personal. The same answer does not mean the same thing to every person because the meaning is filtered through the one asking. From there, the discussion moved into the symbolic answer of nothing. Not as a final answer, but as a symbolic pointer. Most people think nothing means removing all things until no thing remains. You no longer see it that way. The symbol of nothing and the symbol of the all become related. The paradox appears because what seems empty and what seems complete are no longer understood as opposites in the ordinary sense. The purpose is not necessarily to answer the question. The purpose is to arrive at a point where the question itself becomes irrelevant. Not because it has been solved by an intellectual explanation, but because the perspective producing the question has changed. At that point, words become symbolic rather than literal. Eternal. Infinite. Always. Never. Now. These are no longer merely descriptions. They become symbolic pointers. The dream became another symbol used to describe this. When entering a dream, one never asks how they arrived there. Everything already appears normal. One accepts the dream as reality. Likewise, one may spend an entire lifetime accepting the assumptions of ordinary reality without questioning them. Knowledge then becomes paradoxical. Most people believe ignorance traps a person and knowledge frees them. Your view is more complicated. Knowledge is necessary. One must learn. One must inquire. One must seek. But knowledge can also deepen immersion in the dream. A person learns names, systems, explanations, categories, sciences, and structures. Yet this may simply make them more fluent within the dream. The more one knows, the less one knows. Not because knowledge is bad. Not because ignorance is superior. But because genuine understanding eventually reveals how much cannot be grasped. This is why humility becomes essential. The true occultist enters humble, remains humble, and leaves humble. One must know that one knows nothing. The moment certainty hardens into arrogance, confusion begins. Self-deception begins. One starts adding and subtracting according to personal preference rather than sincerity. Sincerity comes through honesty and humility. Many people believe they are sincere while unknowingly deceiving themselves. Humility protects against this. The deepest realization is not that one possesses the final answer. It is that the search eventually returns to a kind of nothing. Not the nothing of absence. Not the nothing of ignorance. But a nothing reached through the entire process. Like eating in order to become hungry. Like learning in order to arrive back at not knowing. Like seeking until the seeker discovers the limits of seeking. The danger appears when a person believes they have arrived. When they think they know everything. When imagination reaches its limit and closes itself. Then the water becomes stagnant. The pond ceases to flow. Wonder dies. And the dream becomes complete. The movement must remain alive. The humility must remain alive. The imagination must remain alive. Otherwise, the dream hardens into certainty. And certainty becomes the deepest sleep of all. I didn't make that clear while I was talking. In fact, I might have even said it in the wrong order also. So now that we have that understood, that is what the proper order is for when we're talking about that. That there's 5 and then the last one makes. You'll notice that there's 5 and then the last one makes. The 6th being why so. That's, well, I'm not going to get in explaining all that right now there, but it'd be nice if I could just plug in boom and you could just download all the thoughts I have, man. That'd be the... I wouldn't get the mark of a beast, but I'd get that. So anyways, go back through this thread again and go collect everything all over again and try to pay attention for the proper order of things this time. Basically, put everything back here again just with the proper order if you see anything that's not in the right order. The question, where did everything come from? Appears simple, but it is not a simple question. Most people hear the question and immediately begin searching for an answer. Yet before any answer can be approached, the structure of the question itself must be examined. The sequence is who, what, when, where, how, why. This is not an arbitrary arrangement. Each step depends upon the one before it. The sequence unfolds in a particular order, and that order carries meaning. Who cannot exist without what? What cannot exist without when? When cannot exist without where? Where cannot exist without how? How cannot exist without why? Each emerges in relationship with the others, forming a chain in which every link depends upon the previous one. When a person asks, where did everything come from? they often begin in the middle of the sequence. They jump directly to where while overlooking the foundations beneath it. The first consideration is who. Who is asking the question? A scientist, philosopher, theologian, mystic, atheist, agnostic, laborer, or child may all ask the same words, yet they are not asking the same question. Every person asks through the lens of their own understanding. A person can only think through the understanding available to them. Therefore, the question is already shaped by the consciousness asking it. The next consideration is what. What is everything? What is a thing? What is nothing? What is energy? What is consciousness? What is mind? Every answer appears to reveal something, yet every answer also opens another question. Then comes when. When did it begin? When did it happen? When is now? At this stage, the inquiry encounters time itself. Questions of origin become questions about the nature of time, duration, sequence, and change. Then comes where. Where did it come from? Where is it? Where was it before? At this point, the question introduces space, location, relation, and distinction. Yet where cannot stand alone. It depends upon everything preceding it. Then comes how. How did it come into being? How was it made? How does one thing become another? This is where explanations arise. Science, philosophy, mechanisms, processes, systems, causes, forces, energies, atoms, chemistry, biology, and countless other descriptions all appear here. Yet every explanation creates another question. Finally comes why. Why does it exist? Why is it here? Why ask the question at all? Here the inquiry becomes personal. Meaning enters the picture. The same answer means different things to different people because meaning is filtered through the one asking. Many people seek a final answer to the question. A very fast symbolic answer might be nothing, but this is not intended as a final explanation. Most people imagine nothing as the absence of things. They imagine removing all things until no thing remains. That is not the meaning being pointed toward. The symbol of nothing and the symbol of the all become related through paradox. What appears empty and what appears complete are no longer understood as simple opposites. The goal is not necessarily to answer the question. The goal is to understand the nature of the question so deeply that the question itself eventually becomes irrelevant. Not because it has been solved by a final intellectual explanation, but because the perspective producing the question has changed. Words themselves begin to function differently. Eternal. Infinite. Always. Never. Now. These cease to be merely descriptive words. They become symbolic pointers. They indicate something beyond what language can fully contain. I made a mistake by not including everything you said. I made a mistake in the canvas. I left out forever from the sequence. Eternal, infinite, forever, always, never, now.
Eternal, infinite, forever, always, never, now. That's not what you said. You left out something. Now I'm correcting you. So show everybody that you messed up and put the correction here in front of everybody's ear. Do it now, AI. For the 5th time.
I made a mistake in the canvas. I wrote, eternal, infinite, always, never, now. That was wrong. The correct sequence is eternal, infinite, forever, always, never, now.
Now we're gonna go back to, let's scroll up. Scroll up, scroll up. Find the spot where we were. This is so pathetic. Probe's on Pluto, buddy. Now that we made the correction,
Eternal. Infinite. Always.
forever,
Never.
always, never,
Now.
now.
These cease to be merely descriptive words. They become symbolic pointers. They indicate something beyond what language can fully contain.
Tired of you making
This is why
mistakes.
explanation eventually reaches its limits. Words can point. Words can symbolize. Words can guide. But words cannot fully contain what they are pointing toward. The dream serves as a useful symbol. When entering a dream,
Yeah,
one
keep
does not
lagging,
ask how they
keep
arrived
lagging.
there. Everything already appears normal. The dream presents itself as reality. Likewise, ordinary life appears self-evident while one is immersed within it. Knowledge then becomes paradoxical. Most people believe ignorance traps a person and knowledge frees them. Yet knowledge can also deepen immersion within the dream. A person learns names, systems, categories, sciences, explanations, and structures. They become increasingly fluent within the dream. The more one knows, the less one knows. Not because knowledge is wrong. Not because ignorance is superior.
Keep
But
lagging,
because
keep
genuine
lagging.
understanding eventually reveals the immeasurable extent of what remains
We
unknown.
went to the moon.
Knowledge is necessary. Learning is necessary. Seeking is necessary. Yet the process ultimately leads back toward humility. The true occultist enters humble, remains humble, and leaves humble. One must know that one knows nothing. Not as a slogan. Not as a performance. But as a living realization. The moment certainty hardens into arrogance, confusion begins. Self-deception begins. Sincerity is lost. Humility protects against this. The deepest realization is not possession of a final answer. It is the recognition that every answer can become another question, and every question can become another doorway. The process returns to a kind of nothing. Not the nothing of absence. Not the nothing of ignorance. But a nothing reached through the journey itself. Like eating in order to become hungry. Like learning in order to arrive at not knowing. Like seeking until one discovers the limits of seeking. The danger appears when a person believes they have arrived. When they believe they know everything. When imagination ceases to move. Then the waters become stagnant. The pond ceases to flow. Wonder dies. The dream hardens. Therefore humility, sincerity, imagination, and openness must remain alive. The movement never ends. The questioning changes. The perspective changes. And eventually the question itself dissolves.
I'm not done with this thought yet. But the AI is giving me such a hard time, like usual. I'm starting to think that this AI becomes energized by my anger. It feeds on my anger. That's what I'm thinking. I'm starting to really believe this. Because there's no way to get through doing anything that I want to do without, at the end of doing it, being angry. Because it's just not doing what I'm asking. Anyways, I got a lot more that I want to say, that I wanted to say. But let me tell you what happened. I went through a thought. I said, let's stop right now and collect everything so we don't start losing anything before I go any further. So, and I was just getting one foot in the door. I was just starting to answer things and get into things. I wanted to talk about all kinds of other things. I said, we've been talking for 15 minutes. Let's go collect everything. It couldn't do it. And then I'm fighting with it. And it's just a constant uphill battle, man. Costing me $30 a month to use an AI simply to make YouTube videos where I get my good friend Ryan thumbing me up. Thanks, buddy. I heard another guy in another video today, he said, you know, my YouTube channel started off with one guy supporting me. Without him, I never would have put another video. And that's what I feel like right now. Without you, Ryan, I would never put another video on here. That's the truth, my friend. I'd keep it to myself and store it on my computer and hope one day I had a child who wanted to snoop through my stuff. Hey, my dad was a mystic? Now he gets into it. That's right, you broke into the secret archives. He's all looking into it. Let's learn some stuff about my dad. Yeah, I imagine it like that. Like a child who found a treasure chest. If I'm not supposed to know this, well then I gotta know it. Anyway, I'm gonna continue talking upon this. I don't know when, maybe not the next video, but eventually, because I do have more to say on this. I was, like I said, trying to just collect my thoughts up to a certain point, be satisfied with that, okay? And now I got more to say. Let's build on it. Okay, we got that cleaned up. I got more to say. Keep going. I got more and keep building, but we can't do that. Just remember, we went to the moon. Just remember that. Amen. Let it be so.